At the end of this module, you will be able to understand the role of rhythm and percussion in African musical traditions, define and identify polyrhythms, cross rhythms, syncopation, and time cycles. Recognize common African percussion instruments and their cultural uses. Analyze the integration of drumming with dance, ritual, and communication. Trace the influence of African rhythms in global musical genres. Appreciate the cognitive, spiritual, and communal dimensions of drumming. Explore the traditional oral methods of rhythmic instruction and mastery. This module delves deep into rhythm and percussion as the heartbeat of African music. Rhythmic expression is the most defining element of African musical traditions, serving as a language, a guide for movement, a spiritual medium, and a social connector. Unlike Western music, where rhythm is often secondary to melody or harmony, African musical culture places rhythm at the center, with intricate layers and complex time structures that are often polyrhythmic and cyclical in nature. The use of drums and percussive instruments is foundational to African identity. These instruments, from the djembe and talking drum of West Africa to the ngoma and slit drum of Central Africa, function not only as musical tools, but also as cultural signifiers that preserve history, announce events, and enforce societal order. You will explore the mathematics of rhythm, the spiritual function of drumming, the interlocking techniques used in ensembles, the regional variations of rhythmic patterns, and the integration of percussion with dance, ritual, and speech. This module also covers the role of call and response, syncopation, polyrhythms, and cross rhythms, while drawing connections between traditional African rhythmic practices and their evolution into modern global genres such as jazz, funk, hip-hop, Afrobeat, and Latin music. The centrality of rhythm in African music. Rhythm is not just musical, but metaphysical, symbolic of life, breath, heartbeat, and communal spirit. African rhythm is cyclical rather than linear. It creates repetition, trance, and transformation. In many cultures, rhythm is considered ancestral knowledge passed down orally. Understanding polyrhythms and cross rhythms. Polyrhythm, the simultaneous use of two or more conflicting rhythms, e.g., 3 against 2, 4 against 6. Cross rhythm, the contrast between rhythm layers played simultaneously to create syncopated effects. Polyrhythmic patterns are core to African drumming ensembles, especially in Yoruba, Ewe, and Mande traditions. African time structures. African time is often perceived as nonlinear and non-metric. Time cycles are looped and variable. Patterns are built on timelines or bell patterns, e.g., gankogi, that keep the group synchronized. Call and response structures allow for spontaneous variation within the rhythmic frame. Percussion instruments, a rhythmic arsenal. Membranophones, drums like djembe, ashiko, dunun, bugarabu, ngoma. Idiophones, rattles, shekere, aksatse. Bells, agogo, gankogwi, slit drums. Body percussion, clapping, stomping, chest slaps used in dances and chants. Percussion as speech. Drums that mimic tonal language, especially in Yoruba and Hausa cultures. The role of the master drummer. In many African cultures, the master drummer is revered as a spiritual and musical leader. They lead the ensemble, cue dancers, communicate with spirits, and control the tempo and emotional energy. Master drummers often undergo years of apprenticeship, learning rhythms that are encoded with cultural meaning. Drumming and dance integration. Rhythm governs movement, and movement reinforces rhythmic memory. Dancers and drummers are in constant dialogue, each responds to the other. Rhythms cue specific choreographed moves, and the mastery of this synergy is a mark of cultural excellence. Rhythms in ritual and daily life. Specific rhythms are reserved for birth ceremonies, initiations, coronations, funerals, healing, and war. Drumming is also used in farming rhythms, work songs, market gatherings, and community celebrations. Each rhythm carries coded meanings understood only by those initiated into its symbolic language. The impact of colonization and Christianity on rituals, suppression or reinterpretation of indigenous rituals. Syncretism, blending of Christian elements with African ritual music, dance, e.g., Aladura churches in Nigeria, Zionist churches in South Africa. Contemporary resistance through cultural revival and decolonization of art. The mathematical and cognitive complexity of African rhythm. African rhythms often feature asymmetrical patterns, odd time signatures, e.g., 7/8, 9/8, and additive rhythms. Performing African rhythms demands mental independence, muscle memory, and aural sensitivity. African drummers often play multiple rhythms at once or switch mid-performance to signal changes. African rhythms in the global context. African rhythmic structures influenced Afro-Cuban music, e.g., conga, clave, Brazilian samba and batuque, funk and hip-hop, James Brown, Fela Kuti, jazz improvisation, Max Roach, Art Blakey. African rhythms form the percussive DNA of the diaspora's music. Transmission and notation. African rhythms are taught orally through imitation, repetition, and participation. Rhythmic knowledge is often encoded in language, chants, or mnemonic syllables, e.g., pataka, go-k-dk. Modern transcriptions use graphic notation, Western time signatures, or indigenous mnemonic codes. The impact of colonization and Christianity on rituals. Suppression or reinterpretation of indigenous rituals. Syncretism, blending of Christian elements with African ritual music, dance, e.g., Aladura churches in Nigeria, Zionist churches in South Africa. Contemporary resistance through cultural revival and decolonization of art.